Well, hey, there you are, Sonia here. Welcome to Sonia's Sermonettes. How does God work, you ask? Well, He works through people a lot of times. I know people like to stand up and look into the sky and call out on God, but unless there are a people that really have the compassion like Christ had and like God the Father had, they can't really fulfill the call that God has ordained for many people's lives. You've got to get a hold of yourself and stop being so critical and so radical and judging people. God's place is that, not ours. Now, here's the thing. I've wondered many times why people have such a bad attitude and why it's escalating completely out of control, and all you hear is condemnation and criticizing. I've been thinking a lot about the warrior David. You know how when he was through fighting all those horrendous battles that we don't even appreciate, even our military today, how they fight for you and I and our freedom, and we don't even appreciate it as we ought to. Many do not, many do. But if you would stop and think about when David was writing in the book of Psalms and how he got depressed, and you have often said, many I've heard say, that it was because of his sin. Well, aren't you just a go-getter about what you understand? But God wants us to know this. You do not know what an individual has gone through or what this processing is that's going on in their life. Many times people come home from battles like David did and was just wore completely out. He fought a war most of his life and won those battles, but here was a war going on within himself. He was exhausted, he was wore out, he had horrible remembrances of things that he saw on the battlefield and the things he had to do and the people that he had to slaughter. You say, well, it was because he did wrong. I would be very careful if I were any of the people that like to judge and criticize who they speak badly about. And David was so happened to be the apple of God's eye. Now, when you ridicule one of God's apple of his eye, you're walking on pretty dangerous ground, if you ask me. You say, well, Sonia, what's got you so stirred up? I had a very wise young lady, just a very young person, tell me when they listen to my podcast or my YouTube channels that it's all good to encourage people, and I understand that you want to, but sometimes you have to address the major issues that are going on right now, even though you don't want to, even though it's a difficult subject to talk about. You still have to realize people really do need to know you are not acting like Christ. When you criticize and judge, you know what Jesus did? Everything he did, he went out there where people really had needs. Are you going out there where people have needs? Do you know how God works? He works through people. You have to ask yourself, what kind of a person am I? That all I can do is find something wrong with everybody, criticize everything anyone's doing, and I'll come to my assumption that they've done wrong. That's why they're going through the processing. But you know what happened to David? David laid down his sword and he picked up a quill, which was a pen just a feather that they dipped into ink, but we'll call it a pen right now so you'll have more of an understanding. What are you going to do when you get through the battles you've had? Are you going to process it? Are you going to be able to find a peace of mind and a place of refuge? But David wrote some of the most beautiful words for you and I. And here he gave out his heart. He gave his life. And we have the audacity to judge these people. Anybody today, we have no right I'm going to say it again. We have no right condemning nor judging. We have no right to pick and choose who we think is special or who we think is God's child or who's God rebelled and just turned his back on them. You need to be careful about what you're doing and what you're saying and the criticisms that's going on out of your mouth. You need to stop and check and ask yourself, what kind and type of a person am I? And what am I giving out here as Christ went about doing everything good, healing, delivering? But you know what? We like to separate. We like to segregate. We like to ridicule and be hateful and mean. It is time to wake up, children. It's time to stop all this ridiculing and judging. And so, until next time.